I'll let you know where we go. And you know Carson, don't you?
Okay, so
Carson.
today's critical thinking
Oh, yeah.
challenge
That's my best friend.
is marketing and sales and art and science. Provide 3 substantive examples to justify your answer. That is everything that we teach on a college campus, and I've given you examples. Examples are biology, marketing, graphic design. Are those all arts or science, or is there a third category? If there is a third category, what is it? And then have one of your group members submit it to the Dropbox. You have until Thursday at midnight to submit your answers. So you can listen to what everybody says and sort of modify your answers and think about things that are better. So the first group to go, according to your colleague who picked and maybe picked poorly, is erasable ink.
Also, a question for submission. You said it's just thesis format.
Yeah, I want a thesis like, sales is an art. Examples of this are X, Y, Z. As you can see by the examples, sales is art, right? And then the other question is everything is an art or science? Yes or no? And then there is a third category or whatever. If you think there's a third category.
Would you like to have that's like 2 paragraphs separately?
Yeah, you should have a thesis statement, so first one.
So whenever we write it, whenever we turn it
like
in, we have to
one or
do
two
it like
sentences.
a thesis.
Yeah, we need a group.
Yeah.
All right, so
Oh, we
erasable
have,
ink.
group snap.
One,
I need to put it together.
is marketing or sales an art or a science?
It's more of an art because in which the salesperson has to use different approaches in selling and be able to use those methods in selling their product or gain the person's attention. So they got to apply that.
All right, so let me ask you about that. Is there a scientific way of going about discovering approaches to the person?
Yeah, because you kind of have to interact with them, and you have to learn from others too, because from their experience, this always works, that works, but it's always about applying it too.
Okay.
Yeah,
So do you think every interaction is completely unique? Or in the aggregate, can you see patterns that emerge? So what I mean is everything absolutely 100% unique? There's an old saying that a man never steps into the same river twice, right? Like this is one of the Eastern philosophers came up with this. And that's true because it's not the same water. I mean, there's constantly new water, right? So you never step into the same river twice.
Yeah.
But is that experience totally unique each time? Is it really that unique? I mean, once you've stepped into the water, don't you sort of, no?
Yeah.
Or is it, similar in the aggregate every time you step in the water? Yeah, technically this water particle is different than that water particle that just went by, but overall experience is that if you step into the water in January in Oklahoma in a stream, it's going to be cold. Right?
There's definite same generalities and patterns that emerge, but approaching and the salesperson can build his own approach and kind of modify it subjectively. So I think it is kind of more of an art.
All right. So what's your next example?
The next example is marketing. More marketing than sales is an art because of all the different forms of advertisements and media they use. It's all kind of subjective.
So if it's subjective, what makes an ad great?
If it entices a buyer to buy.
Okay. I think that's partly correct. Is that really all that subjective? Yes, maybe.
It might be. It might depend on the individual watching the ad as well.
Well, obviously some ads are more successful, aren't they, than others?
Yes.
So you're appealing to a wide range of people. Couldn't you figure that out? Why you're appealing to those people?
Right. Could be targeted ads or non-targeted ads.
Okay. And in targeting, is that subjective?
No.
Okay. So it's not subjective. Are you sure it's not somewhat subjective?
I mean, it's a little bit, but it seems like.
Okay. All right. And your third example?
So adding on to how the ad isn't art, like the marketing ad, it's like kind of like with a perfume or a cologne ad, how it's really abstract and at the end it shows the product like, and you're looking at like, what was this? This has nothing to do with it. So that's kind of an art form of it.
Okay. So the execution of a story could be artistic. All right. Okay. So is everything that we teach on a college campus either an art or science?
Okay. Well, we've got the way it is taught is an art, and then the way it is applied is a science.
Okay.
So.
Teaching style, application, science. Okay, I think that's an interesting concept. Okay. All right, so the actual substance of a subject like biology could be a science, but you can have a biology professor who is completely horrible, and that's pretty subjective, the way they chose to present the material. I will never forget when I was in my undergraduate, I put off till the last semester taking university physical science. That's one of the ones that you have to take. You have to take 2 sciences, I think. So that's still correct. You all have to take 2 sciences. Biology was a lot of fun because you got to cut stuff up and, but then there was, like a train leaves Chicago and it collides with a train leaving Dallas at 100 miles an hour. How far did, well, everybody's dead. That's just like totally boring to me, right? I just don't care about that. Didn't really care about the cosmos and what's out there. Like, that's just not very interesting to me. So I put it off. And the guy who taught it was this guy, his name, I'll never forget it. His name was L. Witt Marks. And I started referring to him as Half-Wit Marks because every day he would start, and he could write with both hands, and he would start at the board and he would write all these mathematical formulas. And at the end of 75 minutes, he would turn around and have this big smile and look like, it was like he had this little math party up at the board and he forgot to invite any of us. And perhaps he had done something there, but I couldn't tell what it was, right? So, okay. All right.
Hugo came up with an interesting third category in his major. Engineering is an application.
Okay.
So application could be a good third category.
Okay.
And my reasoning for that is that you could learn about it through the science and you could apply it through the art. But the thing is, like, there's some people out there that don't really classify it as a science, and they just say it's an application because you're applying stuff that you already know to it, and you're not doing a lot of research into it and
Oh,
evolving
so science involves discovery. Okay. All right.
Cool.
Okay. Interesting answers. Very good. The second group that your colleague chose is the ridiculous 6.
I don't know.
Right.
Okay.
And we chose it as a combination of both science and art.
Okay.
One of our justifications was like analytical data, how people respond, and like experimentation.
Okay.
So examples would be culture. How does this product sell towards this culture, maybe in certain different areas? Do products sell better? As well as industry. So you can't sell an x-ray machine to someone that just sells laptops. It's just not going to work.
Okay.
As well
So
as,
culture is important. Is culture more important in B2B sales or B2C sales?
I could say combination of both, because the industry may be like in a certain area, but I would say more to like the customer.
Okay. So you think industry is less influenced by culture? Is that your answer? Don't want to put words in your mouth.
In a way, I still think they're kind of almost equal, but just kind of depending on where they're at specifically.
Okay.
Because certain brands may be tailored toward certain people, and then other brands tailored toward others. Like farmer, most likely gonna wear boots, or a blue collar worker, most likely gonna wear like steel-toed boots, or anything that may be like they can a nail won't go to the bottom of their boots. Certain
Okay.
things like that.
So I guess we could also think about it in terms of culture impacting, even in B2B. For example, if you go to, one of the classic examples is Tupperware made this thing called the bread saver. And it was made for how do Americans generally buy and eat and consume bread?
Slices?
Slices, yeah. They made this thing that was a bread saver for sliced bread. And it kept bread fresh. And because it's horrible, like you buy the bread in the bag and your little brother always leaves the end off the bag, right? And then the bread gets stale. So Tupperware had this product. How do they eat and consume bread in other countries? So for example, India. What does the bread look like there usually?
I have no idea. Is it
They
like
buy it by the
baguettes
loaf.
or whatever?
It's what?
Slice.
It's what?
The loaf.
It's not a loaf. It's a round loaf, right? So it's different than what we think of as being bread in the United States, which is generally sliced loaf bread. It's like a round loaf. And so when they wanted to develop a product for that market and sell it over there, they had to develop a different kind of bread saver. So that was influenced by the culture. They don't have oblong loaves of bread. So oblong loaves of bread are a relatively modern phenomenon. Why is that?
That round loaf of bread? or-
No, oblong loaves of bread.
Like the ones we eat.
Yeah, you have to have a pan to do that, right? Historically, people didn't have these pan things, so they just stuck the bread in the oven and it was
Kinda just
round.
around.
Right, yeah, okay. What's your second example?
So, was that one for the? That was my first one. Oh, that was the culture and the industry, both my different examples for that one.
Okay,
And then the other justification would be like a good combination of facts and empathy.
okay,
So like analytical info, basically statistics kind of goes back to kind of culture. Did they buy more here? Does this customer buy more of these items compared to these ones? Buying more laptops compared to more like office supplies.
okay, all right,
Yeah, and like certain patterns as well.
all right. And your third?
Creativity of displays in presentation, kind of, and also like mastering your skills.
And you
So-
think that's an art?
Yes. A certain like commercials, like let's say like JG Weber as an example, they have the 877 cash now. And a lot of people, they need cash and they say it's quick and easy. Everyone's singing out their windows. So it's easy to get to them and it's easy to get your cash. Quick.
Okay. All right, and you think that that's particularly effective, but that's subjective?
Yes. For people that would actually need money compared to people that may not need it when they're financially stable.
Okay, all right. Is everything an art or science?
Everything in art or science,
Yeah.
I think it's a combination of the both.
So you think everything is a combination? Really? How is physics an art?
Physics and art
Mhm.
go on as an art as how you display your information to your people, your current students, basically informing, let's say someone has a disability and they don't learn as well as the other class, so you portray the information different to them. So as an art, you would know how to change your skill sets around to apply for certain students or certain applications in any other industry. Science being as like the process is how going from the first step all the way down to the end. Example being math, you start out as adding and subtracting, and then you go down to multiplication, division, and then you go on to further, so like trigonometry or calculus.
Okay, but in that, is there really any creative way to present standard deviation?
Not
I
necessarily,
mean,
you just basically can kind of.
it's a
format it.
formula, right? I mean, standard deviation, like is there a creative way of presenting the standard deviation? Is there a creative way of telling people how to figure the mean?
It either works or it doesn't.
There's that one math equation. I don't remember it because I'm very bad at math. But there's that one math equation that they taught us by using a song. Can't remember it. Like the A.
Like
A
the ways you go about
the-
teaching
I
it.
know what you're talking
Yeah.
about, the
Mhm.
quadratic formula.
Like
And
some
they
people
made
are
a song for
visual, some
steps.
people are
Oh yeah, because
technical.
you can use that, but then there's also other ways to solve certain problems. That one's just easier, so you don't have to go through all the steps. You just plug in all the information.
You can use acronyms for certain things.
PIMDAS.
let's see, what is it, inner, outer, last? middle,
Oh, yeah, for foil.
Foil, yeah.
And then, yeah, you can
First,
set it
inner,
up as,
outer,
Foil.
last.
you can either
yeah.
set it up as a coincidence next to each other or
Right.
one on top of the other.
Right, okay. And some people might be more attracted to the side by side as opposed to.
I like the top and bottom. I think it's a lot easier.
Okay. All right, very good answers, good job. The next group is back table.
Oh, I see.
Okay. Marketing or sales and art or science?
Art.
Art, definitely an art. Okay, what are your examples?
Okay, selling certain style of jeans means creating strategies to push styles into the buyers so they can buy the products.
Okay, and why is that? With regards, like jeans are fascinating actually, in terms of the sale and marketing of jeans. Historically speaking, jeans were what?
For the working class.
They were for the poor people, but it was a durable material that they could use to work in,
Yeah, it wasn't cute.
farming or agriculture. They weren't like a style product. Now, like jeans are all about fashion, aren't they?
And you buy them with holes in them now.
And you buy them with
Which
working pockets.
holes without holes.
Or like
high
high-waisted,
waist,
There's
low
different
waist, mid
washes of them, so you can match them with other things.
Right. You can dress them up. They got bling on them, some of the jeans. All right, so that's all clearly
embroidery on them.
embroidery. Okay.
Even paint, actual paint. I've seen pants that they look display paint on.
Oh, yeah, yeah, and
You
I,
rent jeans and then pay more.
for some reason, the women in my life drugged me to Affair of the Heart several years ago.
Yeah.
Affair of the Heart is the tool of the devil. The devil has many tools. That is one of them. Starbucks is another. I tell my students when we go to competition, if you mention the word Starbucks, I will punch you in the throat. Like Starbucks, I hate Starbucks. We can go to Dunkin' all day long, no Starbucks, right? So I got drugged to Affair of the Heart, and yeah, people are like, it's not just, hey, I mean, like they've got very intricate designs that are, some of them are hand done, some of them are embroidered. They now have these crazy sewing embroidering machines that you put on the thing and it'll do it all automatically for you, and you can customize your jeans all kinds of ways. So, okay, and that's all like, whether you like that or not, that's all seems to be very subjective, doesn't it? Like it seems to be very in the eye of the beholder, what you think is popular or cool or whatever, okay? So I'll buy that. What's your next example?
So whenever you're selling a house, the
Home selling.
person selling the house must be creative in order to adapt to the different people buying the house. So if it's a couple coming in, then you might be like, this space is great for an office. But if it's a family, then you would say, oh, this would be a great playroom for your kids and everything. And so you have to kind of get creative whenever, as soon as they walk in, you have to kind of like watch them and get their cues and everything to adapt.
Okay, I think that's important, and you guys have recognized something that's really, really interesting, which is features and benefits. It's not necessarily a one-for-one. Every product or service has features, and people don't buy features for the sake of the feature, do they? They buy features for what it will do for them, the benefits that they can derive from that feature. So, as you pointed out, a home. If you've got a young couple or a couple that never wants to have children, having 3 bedrooms and presenting it as, there's lots of room for growth here. Well, no, they might be more interested in having a home office or, a Wii room or whatever the hell it is that you people are playing these days. Whatever, like, gaming platform it is that you can put in your home entertainment system. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with that, right? Sell it that way. So I think that's a good example. Your third?
Okay, so basically, like billboards, they
Okay,
have to be creative. You want to catch the consumer's eyes, like get their attention, especially in like with location too. I feel like it's kind of an art because you want to put your billboard in like a location where like your target market is gonna see it. So
okay, but isn't that a science? I mean,
I
like,
mean,
we can do counts, like, on billboards. I mean,
yeah,
if you wanna, I mean, we know, and it doesn't even take all that much science to figure this out. So for example, I live in Guthrie. Guthrie's on I-35. Guthrie also has 2 state highways that run through it. Highway 33 and Highway 77, right? So Highway 77 runs north and south. I think at 33 is east and west, and 33 goes out if you go west to Kingfisher. Now, why the hell anybody would want to go to Kingfisher is completely beyond me. But it doesn't take a whole lot to figure this out, that if you put in a billboard on I-35, you're gonna get a hell of a lot more views than if you put it on Highway 33 going to Kingfisher.
Yeah.
Right?
so location more science, but like the actual billboard more art.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. Okay, I'll buy that. Is everything in order of science?
We like, you mean like class-wise?
Yep, like,
We,
like
we-
subjects, biology, marketing, graphic design.
We put that they're an art too. If you want success in everything you're being taught, it becomes an art. You have to adapt to the new ideas in order to create your life out of it, because you're going to college to create your life technically. So you have to adapt to the way that they're giving you things, whether or not that means that you learn how you're able to take notes. Like I have to take notes very creatively in order for me to draw my attention to them. Like this, I do a bunch of headers, but that's basically that. We call it an art.
So it's a creative, so everything's a creative process, even physics, is that right? Physics is a
In
creative
order to
process?
remember it, you might have to get creative.
Okay.
Do a little jingle, yeah. And like I was saying for erasable ink, like you have to get creative. Like some people are visual learners, and some people like it written down. Some people like to experience it. So just think
Okay.
about that.
Some people learn by actually doing, other people can learn by reading and just absorbing. Okay, all right, I'll buy that. All right, very good. Good job. And the chosen, it's odd how you all selected the group order and you ended up last, isn't it?
Oh, they
For the first one, is marketing and sales or art?
Is marketing or sales an art or science?
Yeah, you could actually, that's one way you could get creative with this. You could decide one is the science and one's an art, right? You can do that, right?
So we believe what our group chose is that that marketing and sales is an art because we believe that it's a craft. If you don't know how to present your product or present yourself, no matter what statistics say, it's gonna be hard for you to sell. At my job, the number one thing they've always told me is that if people don't like you, they're not buying from you.
Mm-hmm.
Science doesn't let somebody like you. It's art. You have to know how to present yourself and what you're selling for them to like you.
Okay, then you sell
I sell cars.
cars, right? So people, if they don't trust you, they're not gonna buy a car.
If I have people coming right in the door and then they're like, hey, we want to look at a car, this and this. And I'm like, okay. And then I get them and I walk them around the whole lot trying to find what they like. Do you like that? Do you like that? That's not good. First thing I do is I get people inside and I'm like, hey, my name's this and this. And I even meet their kids and know what they're about. And they're like, okay, what do you need and why do you need it?
Okay.
And if I don't understand why they need it, if I don't treat it like a craft, I have to know, okay, they have 3 kids. What does that mean? They need this. They don't care if I show them this or this. They care more for the safety. That's the number one thing I hate. And that's a craft. I have to know, hey, your kids, of course your kids matter to you, I hope. So there's a safety vehicle.
Okay, all right. What are your examples?
Well, that was one of my
So cars
examples.
are selling
Yeah.
cars.
Another one of our examples is basically kind of it's kind of ties into a little bit what everybody's kind of saying about like ads and stuff like that. Also, the way I believe is if you see an ad, it has to be artistic. It has to rely it has to be something visual, or you have to like listen to it and be like, man, I really like that, or that sounds good, or that looks good, that looks beautiful, I want to go look at that. It's an emotion. You're making somebody feel something. That's to me is a form of art. If you can get somebody to feel like comfortable, or wow, I really want to go check that out, or hey, let's go stop and look at that.
Okay. So what about in a business to business context? Is the person's feeling about it at all important? Is it important, for example, that I feel, we just bought a new copier for the College of Business that's up there. I'm fascinated by copiers. I just love copiers, right? They're just really interesting machines to me. Is it important that I look at it and think, wow, that's just a beautiful copy?
It's not important that you look at it, but it's important the business looks at it and you got the copier, right?
You think that when they chose the copier, the dean was like, that is a sexy copy. that copier, like, I mean, not the other one just looked like.
No, but the way you see it is if he think he wants a real big copier, it's gonna take up a lot of room. It's a visual thing. You're
Okay.
gonna be like, the more better it is, oh, it can fit in this area, it's smaller, it does what we need it to do. Why do we want a big one that's gonna take a lot of space?
Okay. Sometimes you need bigger so that you can do more stuff, like you have more features on a big copier, just can a little.
So if I can sell you something that's small and it can do everything the big one can, what would you buy?
I don't know. It depends on performance. I'm gonna be more concerned about whether or not the stapler is gonna jam, as opposed to is that stapler beautiful? Right? Is that, I like it, so copiers now, this is the thing that just fascinates me. When I was a kid, my mother owned a real estate company growing up, and, you know, she had this copier, and it was, back in the day, she was one of the first ones to have a big copier. The way realtors sold was they had these forms, and they were actually, you still have vestiges of this. In email, there's a part in your email that says CC. That stands for carbon copy. And back in the day, when I was a kid, forms actually came with carbon copies. So there was this part that went between pages, and as you typed on the top page, it transferred to the second page by the use of carbon. Then they came out with something that was more, and they used to give you this when you go to a restaurant, you give them your credit card, they'd actually run it through this reader, which is why the credit cards still have these things on them now. They're getting away from that. So like, I think I've got several credit cards that don't have the raised numbers, but that was because they would run it through this machine, and there was a carbon in there, and that carbon kept, you know, it had the imprint of those numbers on it. And so you would take the carbons and you would tear them up so that people couldn't get your number, right? And then they came out with a better mousetrap, which was called carbonless copy paper, which was this stuff that had a film on it that didn't have the carbon that allowed you to transfer from one sheet to the next. So that's where the CC comes from, is carbon copies. So realtors would buy these big, in real estate companies, they would buy these big things of forms, and you would put it in a typewriter, and it would basically create 3 carbon copies. They were forms in triplicate, and they were perforated at the top. You put it in the typewriter, and the first form stayed with the real estate office when you made an offer. The second form went to the person that the offer was made to, the seller, and then the buyer kept a copy, right? That's the way it worked. Now, copy machines came along, and they got cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and so people stopped doing that, and computers came along, and we could, you know, put the form in, and then we could copy it. Well, the first copiers didn't have collating abilities. So what you would have to do is, if you had a multi-page copy or a multi-page agreement, you would have to collate it yourself. You put one sheet in, you'd make the copies, and then you would go through and do it for each page, right? Copiers now do that for you. Like, they collate it, they'll staple it, I'm just fascinated by this. They'll hole punch it. The copier is not just a copier, it's also a scanner. So I just scan stuff to myself, and I can send it by email, come by email. I mean, they're just fascinating machines, aren't they? Just absolutely. I love copiers. So, but I'm not terribly concerned with whether or not that's stapler. So the copier has a stapler in it. It's like, I'm not sitting there going, that is just the most beautiful stapler I've ever seen. All I care about is what? That it staples the copies. I don't care about how it looks, do I? So I'm really worried about whether or not it does what it does. Whether or not it functions the way it should.
So that's what the job of our ads are, though, to show you that it's due. Like if I have an amazing commercial showing the printer, like crisp, sharp, staples and then sliding right out of the printer, you know what I mean? You're like, oh my God, like that's intense. With some romantic music in the background coming right out. As soon as it comes out, a little bit of steam coming out, you know what I mean? When you look at it, it got you to want to come get it.
I might be horrified by that. Like, I just want to know that the copier does. Right, so, all right, so I get advertising, but I think in a business to business context, people care about the facts more than they care about how you really present it, don't they?
I think they care about what has helped in the past, what has helped people with in the past, honestly. But honestly, like if you think about it, what is the world without art? There's not movies, there's not.
Well, I mean, that's, I agree with you. You know, I mean, art is important, but is art the only thing? I mean, is there a scientific way of going about this?
There is.
But I think that's
Okay. All right. So
That's
what's
old.
your third?
it's not gonna help.
That was the first one was like presenting yourself, like
Okay.
so knowing yourself.
Okay.
And then the second one was the product and knowing how to sell it.
Okay.
And the third one.
All right. So is everything an art or science? Both. Everything is both. So physics is both, biology is both.
No, she's talking about a different one.
Oh, okay. Which one?
I think everything's an art. Like I said,
You
I don't
think
think
everything's an
Oh, the second one, bro.
Is everything, so biology is an art.
We're on number 2 now, brother.
Creative biology.
the second one, I'm gonna say it's a guidance. It's not.
I think creative biology is called not science, right? I mean, like if we're gonna study, if we're gonna study the cuttlefish, for example, you know, just sitting there, if we don't have a method, that's not really studying, is it?
No, we got confused because when you said is everything with, like, you know, like art category for number 1.
Okay,
That's why he said, yeah.
okay,
He said for the second one, he sees it more as like a guidance or a structure.
okay. So with regard to what we teach on the college campus, is everything either an art or science?
It's not a third. We can't pick a third question.
Well, what's the third? You came up with a third category.
Yeah,
What's the third category?
I think the third category is like a guidance. It's not
Okay.
necessarily an art that we were being taught. And I mean, yeah, there's theories and stuff and statistics that we're taught, but in reality, y'all really just teaching us, like, y'all are guiding us to get ready for the business world, what we're about to get
Like a
into.
structure.
Oh, okay, so
Like
you're
instruction.
actually saying that with regard to, for example, the teaching of it, that's something that you have to do on your own, we're just providing you with tools to do it.
Like so we have to apply everything ourselves in the real world. You, like, basically the whole part of teaching someone that it's a structure, it's a guidance. Hey, this is what you need to do this, and then we apply it. Because all of us, like, example, everybody in class, they have different ways of learning stuff. For me, it might be super easy for me to remember an equation, but for other people, they have to have it shortcut, easy for them. That's their own art. That's their form of art. For us, we believe that you guys are just providing it out there for us, and we, as individuals, select what way we break it down and what way we learn it.
Okay. All right, so you think there's this third category, which is not really an art or a science, it is the,
Like structure, guidance, kind of like.
yeah, okay, it is the providing you with the raw material, but then you have to synthesize that material on your own and make it your own. Okay, I'll buy that. All right, good job. So the reason I have you do this exercise is because we talked about the first philosophy in marketing, which corresponds to most of human history, which is the production, which didn't involve a whole lot of art necessarily or science. It was just people have needs, and if you have needs, you have to fulfill those needs some way once we start having a division of labor. And it didn't take much to sell stuff, because if you have a transportation need, you just need to maybe have that need felt and met. And the Ford Model T came along, and that was better than what came before. And so you didn't have to think much about that. The second era is what we call the marketing era, and it begins about in 1960 to about 1990. And this era recognizes that once we start having more people, so Ford is the first, he's not the first one to make a car, right? There are lots of people that make cars, but basically they are customized products for wealthy people, and they are really at that point, they are a luxury novelty item. At the time Henry Ford decides to start mass producing cars, first of all, you couldn't take them very many places because the roads weren't there. There wasn't an infrastructure for them. So the Model T really changes that. That's when we start having to have more and more roads and things like that and better infrastructure. Then people recognize that, hey, you can make a lot of money at this. And so other people begin to enter the market. You know, the Dodge brothers come along and they start manufacturing. And then there were a whole bunch. And a bunch of those have gone the way of the dodo. There was Studebaker, for example, and a lot of other cars have come and gone. You all probably don't remember this brand. It was very popular when I was a kid growing up. Everybody wanted one. It was called the DeLorean. That car company came and went. And I kind of suspected when Elon Musk came out with his electric car that was going to be the DeLorean of your generation. But it appears now, actually, Tesla stock is more valuable than GM or any of the other major auto manufacturers. And so it's really maybe taken hold. At that point, we start to differentiate products from each other. And there was a recognition that we could study this phenomenon, that people buy things in a scientific perspective. So we could manufacture things in a scientific perspective. And so management became, this era comes about during the positivist movement. There was this idea that science could solve all of our problems. And there was at the beginning of the 20th century, and certainly by the time we get well into the revolution, the Industrial Revolution, there was this notion that science would conquer everything, that we could solve every problem by a scientific application. And so there was even science in the study of management. How do we go about doing things in the most efficient manner? So scientific management came about. How do we, for example, they went into steel factories, and they figured out, how do you make steel? How do you make steel? Anybody know how you make steel? So metal, right? So you take, I think it's iron and something else, and you have to heat it. But in that, the early production of steel, they heated them with these furnaces that were fueled by coal-powered furnaces, right? And so they went in and they figured out exactly what was the optimum shovel size and weight. If you got the shovel too light, what happens? The worker has to do what? They have to shovel more, but if you get the shovel too big, then what happens?
They shovel slowly.
Huh?
They shovel much lower.
Or they can't shovel it at all, right? I mean, at some point, so there's an optimum level there at which they can shovel the coal into the furnace and be the most efficient and productive. And so the marketing era recognizes that we can apply all kinds of scientific perspectives to consumers. We can study the consumer from a scientific perspective and figure out what it is that they want and need. It's not just about if you build it, they will come. Now we have differentiation in the market. Well, now we're going to have to figure out why our product is more appealing. Why is it that Ford F-150 is the most #1 selling car in America year after year? I think it's been the #1 selling truck in the United States for 15 years now. It beats out Chevy and Dodge every year. Why is that? Well, we can study the consumer from a scientific perspective and figure out why that is. What is it that makes Ford the most popular truck in America? What do you think it is?
America.
It's American made.
Bill
So is
Ford
Chevy.
truck.
Dodge is, I guess, not anymore because it's owned by who?
I think it was Fiat. I think
It's owned by Fiat. It used to be Daimler Chrysler, which was Mercedes bought Chrysler. They sold it, and now it's Fiat owns Dodge Ram. So, we recognize that we can do this from a scientific perspective. I'm out of time, so we will talk about the relationship era and value co-creation next time. So I did pass a roll sheet, right? Did everybody sign the roll sheet?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, are you in our group snap? Because we made remember we added each other? I know, yeah, it was last time.
What is it?
Our group Snapchat.
Yeah, we need to make it because we never made
I
it.
have you guys in Snapchat, but I don't have the group.
Yeah, because we haven't made it, girl.
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, you can just start it.
I think I have everyone. I just need.
Yeah. So just share it.
Do I have you on Snap? Do I have you?
Can you make the group tonight and then I'll just add people on there?
Yeah.
Since all of us are
No, yeah, I'll make it.
I forgot his name too.
And it's because in the business.
Yeah, I'll open it.
How we call
Yeah.
derived.
I already have
demand.
some stuff
What that
written
means
out
is
too, so
that
I'll
the demand
that.
for the business product is derived from my need to satisfy my customers. It's not because I love the thing for itself. Like I like my suits because I like my suits, right? But in a business context, I don't care about how I feel about the content. What I care about is that it gets the copies that I need from the students, right? On test it in most efficient way. And so that's derived demand because I'm not valuing the thing for my own intrinsic reward. I'm valuing it because I need to satisfy consumers, which you all, in terms of getting you materials and things like that.
So when you're prospecting, are you yourself doing that, or you hire other people to do it for you?
It depends on the industry, it depends on the business, right? So prospecting is one of the most difficult things. And most companies, what they do anymore is in a business-to-business context, they will start you with a book of business, and then you are expected to grow that business. So you start out with, these are already known businesses, but you're then expected to develop that.
Okay. And also, let's just how long have you asked this question? I feel like the current generation is more artists and I feel like moving away from that. So degrees and technology is selling to be the side. Right. Learning to apply it.
Yep. And I've asked this question and we just haven't talked this about.
And it's been most majority of arts, I'm assuming.
Most of them say art because they don't think of marketing as a science because they think of science as being like physics. They think of it as, you have to have a mathematical formula.
But it's like music, right? Music is arguably science.
Actually, it is, yeah. So what they figured out, and songwriters figured this out, is that there is actually a mathematical formula that guarantees whether or not a song will be.
Yeah, like the four chords or whatever.
Yes.
And like stop hits down. So.
I mean, it's actually very formalized what
Yeah.
kind of music we want. So and so they've actually got computer algorithms that now write, sort of the musical chords for it.
So a lot of music nowadays is so synthetic, especially.
Yeah, it does, because it's all basically the same. It's guessing them. And it's about this harmony and balance in music.
Okay. All right.
Uh-huh.
All right. See you Thursday.
See you Thursday.
Forgot to end the stream.